Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist Paragons of Pandroth. Last time we left off, after what was certainly an interesting episode, we performed another skip abduction hoping to acquire another prisoner and received none other than Light, super psycaster from the Believers of Boyo. Having turned pirate, we have taken him in, for now. We'll talk a bit more about him soon, but we also gave birth to Corinna, daughter of Ellie and Volek, currently in the growth vat until she's 3 years old, which will only take a few days. Finally, we explored the pit gate a bit, but also had insects spawn right next to it, a result of our not entirely successful attempt of dumping all of our pollution down the hole. Today then we get things started by using Ellie's creativity inspiration to make a double bed, and as I had hoped, it is of masterwork quality, bearing the rather sad image of fields of dead plants with no life inside. There are also 8 dying mules on the ground, all of this apparently a reference to the toxic fallout that struck us recently. Now task number 2 for Ellie then, striking a deal with the bulk goods trade ship here, but we only end up selling them a few old clothing items. As you can see, Elpis has also awoken from his death rest again, now fueled by the rush of 4 psychofluid pumps. His psychic sensitivity has climbed to 365%, and that is as a level 1 psycaster. Just for comparison, Light, a level 6 psycaster, is at 415%. And speaking of Light and what to do with him, you guys left plenty of great comments on the last episode. And over the course of the next few episodes, I think I'll try to mix and match what I thought were the best ideas. One thing that I think most of us can agree on is that fundamentally Light only cares about himself and his powers. Remember that he volunteered to have his eyes cut out to become a stronger psycaster, so receiving new eyes, which was a question last episode, a procedure that would weaken his powers, all because an ideology he does not believe in demands it, I can't really imagine he would be on board with that. Also, taking orders from Elpis, a kid who everyone sees as this psycasting prodigy, but who can barely cast a single one, and it's word of trust at that, that's definitely not Light's style. Still, Light might be able to satisfy his sense of superiority from guiding Elpis along, help him gain a few psycasting levels, and that's exactly what we are currently preparing for. And as if to tell us that we're on the right path, Randy sends a psychic soothe our way, which is now being followed by a leader speech from young Elpis. In this speech, I'd like to imagine Elpis telling the colony that he'll be going away for a bit. Yes, indeed, today we are beginning Elpis's pilgrimage arc, if you will, because, well, apart from gaining royal favors and becoming a title holder, there aren't really that many ways in the game to reliably obtain psycasting ranks. Light, however, has mastered one of them, and over the next few days, maybe even weeks, he's going to show it to Elpis. To get the journey started, the two of them will enter 2 transport pods, together with some food, hemogen packs, components, medicine, and steel. Essentially, everything you need to start a small sanguiphage outpost, and that is exactly what the two of them will be doing. We will probably have to resupply them from time to time, but for now, this right here should help them get started. Once the pods are loaded, we then pick a destination, and it will be one very far away from our home base, almost as far as our drop pods can carry us. To be more precise, we are sending them to this remote, somewhat mountainous tile out in the tundra. Now, for all of this to work, we also need to change one small game setting, but this is a base game feature, so I don't consider it cheating or modding in any way. We need to make sure that under gameplay setting, the maximum number of colonies is set to at least 2. What this now allows us to do is to have Light and Elpis settle on their new tile. And don't worry, I promise we are not going to abuse this, you can certainly do that. Really, the one and only reason we're doing this is because this guarantees you to find an Anima Tree. Other types of maps that you can enter, faction bases, ancient shrines, mining sites, all that kind of stuff, do not give you one of these. Anima trees only spawn on what is called landing site maps, and we're now going to use this one to bump Elpis' psycasting up a few levels. To that end, Elpis and Light will create themselves a small outpost as close as possible to the tree, Since this is technically a new colony, we are also starting back with very low expectations, as colony wealth is extremely low, and apparently we have also set up camp right next to an ancient danger. We'll see whether or not we crack that open. So, while the two of them get underway, we order the implantation of our Halcyon slave xenogerm into our slave Shireen. While she's sedated, we might as well also give her a bionic leg to get rid of that right foot injury, and then in a few days, both of our slaves should be able to use this new xenogerm, which makes them a bit happier and also increases their manipulation stat, among other things. Our one and only remaining doctor on the sea ice, Nightshade, then unfortunately getting sick with the plague, and I think allowing her to self-tend with herbal medicine may have been a slight mistake here. You will unfortunately see what I mean soon enough. Light and Elpis, meanwhile, already in deep meditation near the Anima Tree as the evening rolls around. I have set both of their schedules to meditate for pretty much the entire day, because I really want this to be sort of a spiritual journey for the two of them. We are definitely not planning to build a long-term base here. Speaking of building though, we are about to do some of that back home. I think it's about time that we get rid of the alter disrespected penalty, so we're now in the process of constructing a very small separate room for that. Unfortunately though, we don't get far as we are now attacked by breaching pirates, 26 of them, including at least one Doomsday and one triple rocket launcher. And curiously, this is the exact same faction that Light belonged to before we abducted him, so they are probably here for him, although he is no longer home. Now, all things considered, these pirates have chosen a rather convenient spot for them to appear on the map. Convenient for us, that is, as they have to walk right by those sleeping insects. That is why we are now having Volek jump over there as quickly as possible to wake some of those insects up. Hopefully that will draw some of the pirates here into a fight with them, potentially softening up their numbers a bit, not to mention that it might also help us get rid of the insects. Well, at least some of them, that is. Of course, the entire process is accelerated by one of the pirates carelessly walking right through the cocoons. This, I think, now signals for Light to get the hell out of here. In the process, he can also quickly one-shot the grenadier walking ahead of the group, although these breachers will most likely still go after our walls and not walk straight into an ambush. Walking straight into the insects, however, that they have perfected. Both the triple and the Doomsday rocket launcher also were not used. I'll admit though, I had imagined for this to go a little different. Be that as it may, our enemies are now here and we greet them on open ground. Certainly not the way I prefer to fight, but in this case, with our enemies being breachers, I think we have no other choice. So this will be a chaotic fight, I'm sure. I'm taking some comfort in the fact that we can hide behind our ghouls and mechs, but I have a feeling that this could be bad. Right, so Lauren's down, but she's a wimp, so that actually protects her from taking any serious damage. Our enemies are also fleeing now, but as you can see, that's only one half of the fight. We also still have some 70-odd insects left to deal with, and that fight is not off to a great start either, as the already injured Volek does not make it back behind walls in time. Still, for this one at least we can employ a slightly more useful strategy than just meeting the enemy head-on. Nonetheless, I am still not entirely sure how well this is going to go. I think that depends largely on the durability of our melee blockers. At the very least, you can see it near the right edge of the screen. Lauren has successfully crawled her way back to our front door, and her injuries are really not that severe. I actually don't even think she's at the risk of dying, but that's genies for you. They do go down ridiculously fast. A few moments later, we are even informed that Lauren has recovered and can now rejoin the fight, which is obviously very useful, not only because she brings some extra firepower, but also because as a mechanitor she controls a few mechs, and those can now join us too. Whether or not the addition of Tony here, blasting everyone with fire, was really all that well of a thought-out decision, that remains to be seen though. Nonetheless, for now it looks like we should be able to handle this after all. Somewhat surprisingly, Maniac, who has been on the front lines for several minutes now, has not even taken a single injury. And we're skipping ahead a bit here because this did in fact drag out for several more minutes. The fires are, well, honestly, I'm not sure if they're hurting or helping. Nonetheless, I think it's safe to say that we've got this, but it certainly wasn't pretty. So then, let's get started with cleanup and repairs, and of course that also involves extinguishing those flames, to avoid fates like Lawrence here, who suffers a slight burn from trying to rescue one of our mechs and immediately goes down again. A few seconds later, Ellie also suffers a daze, so that is one more somewhat healthy person that we are missing for the cleanup here. Eventually though, all the flames are extinguished, Maniac has beaten all the remaining mega spiders to death, and then we're struck by a psychic drone. Now importantly though, this drone has not struck the sea ice, that one is still affected by a psychic soothe. Instead it has hit our two psycasters, who now also have to fend off a man-hunting elk. So far so good. Back home meanwhile, Nightshade's plague is becoming an issue. We have switched to regular medicine now, but the plague's progression is comfortably ahead of the immunity. It is just 6 or 7 percentage points, but this could get interesting. I think we'll have to keep a very close eye on this. No surprise then that Elpis suffers a mental break because of the psychic drone. As long as Light does not suffer one of his own though, he should be able to protect the kid. Successfully unlocking the Death Refusal Psychic Ritual then might be a way to save Nightshade if all else fails. Up next we are quickly going to unlock Pleasure Pulse. That strikes me as a very serviceable tool to combat widespread mood penalties. Just in time then we have Vulek back up on his feet to use the Preach Health ability on Nightshade. This now gives her a 25% bonus to immunity gain speed, and by God she needs it. Her immunity progress is still lacking a comfortable 4 percentage points behind, and I'm afraid that this will come down to the absolute last second. So I'm speeding this up just a little bit just to see how things are going. We seem to be catching up, slowly but steadily. Nightshade's immunity rating is very close to surpassing the plague's progress. That progress, however, has also already reached 99%. Whew, so there we are, lucky that worked. Certainly a lesson for future events like this. Maybe we have taken the threat of death a bit too lightly in this series. Hard not to though, when about half of your colony is literally unkillable. The rest of the day then remains thankfully uneventful. Our 2 mental breaks come to an end, only to be followed by Light suffering a new one. But regarding the Anima Tree, we are making some progress. Back home, meanwhile, it's time to upgrade the flooring inside of our very small temple room. For 12 steel apiece, we are now putting down some techist tiles, a conversion that we might eventually perform throughout the entire base. For now, this one very small room here will have to suffice. The arrival of an exotic goods trade ship then presents us with another trading opportunity, an opportunity that Ellie will of course gladly take. This time we are buying just a single item, the Side Trainer for Solar Pinhole. That certainly strikes me as useful to give to a young psycaster living on the sea ice. After all, we might still get the occasional power outage, and with this psycast we can get at least some light and warmth back where we need them most. Now at this point we also have Lauren begin to make some Thrumbo fur parkas, and this could very well be the last set of clothing we make before we switch over to heavy armor. However, before we allow Lauren to finish the job, let us first give her a new role, the role of Production Specialist to be precise. Considering that this role increases the quality level of all items that Lauren makes by 1, we are about to see a vastly increased influx of masterwork and even legendary gear, I think. In my opinion, the Production Specialist is definitely one of the most powerful roles you can give to a pawn. It does reduce a colonist's usefulness a tiny bit. No longer being able to transport, maintain or rearm things is definitely a bit of a hindrance, but I think that'll be more than made up for by the increased production speed and of course, most importantly, quality. Now in Lauren's case here, she does not lose any of the important skills that she's good at, and shortly after, a first Thrumbo fur parka is finished. Although, somewhat disappointingly almost, it's only of excellent quality. Following that, however, the masterworks just don't stop coming, so we should be able to get everyone nice and protected against the cold in no time. Our two psycasters, meanwhile, are almost halfway to Elpis's first level up, while Maniac gets nice and cozy in his new Thrombofur outfit. Following that, we then move some steel out of our storage room to make room for the loot that we can recover from the raid. Lauren's next Thrombofur parka, this one for Vulek, then a legendary one, which now results in an absolutely insane cold resistance temperature of minus 118 degrees Celsius. Shortly after, the sea ice is then struck by a flash storm, but thankfully far enough away from our base to not harm us. And in the middle of it all, Corinna already becomes a child, 3 years old already. Time certainly flies when you're in the growth vat. For now, all she finds to equip herself with is a toque, but of course Lauren has a proper outfit for her already queued up at the tailoring bench. Before she gets to finish that, however, we are then asked what to name our small psycasting outpost, and of course we will name it after a patron supporter from the naming rights tier, Xavanazas. I hope I pronounced that correctly. A creativity inspiration for Lauren then also hands us our second legendary Thrombofur parka, and we do possess the Word of Inspiration psycast for Elpis to learn too, so I have a feeling, and it's not exclusively a good one, that we could see our colony wealth skyrocket very, very soon. In the evening then, a beautiful aurora strikes the sea ice, as we watch Vulek construct some power conduits, because in just a short moment we're going to move our deep drill. First of all though, head deep driller Maniac gets a new eye installed. The scar on his left one is still causing him some pain, and that has resulted in a permanent -5 mood penalty, something that can quickly be alleviated with our find from the pit gate here. Elpis and Light, meanwhile, are making good progress. They are now up to 11 patches of anima grass. However, they are also slowly starting to run out of food and hemogen, so we're loading some transport pods now to send some supplies their way. Included are not only food, hemogen and steel, but also 3 side trainers, 2 of which Elpis can learn immediately. For Vertigo Pulse he needs to advance to level 3. We are then also informed of a steel mining site nearby, one of several places we could and probably should investigate sooner or later. Our people are definitely itching for that next raid, although to be honest, a steel mining site is probably at the very bottom of the list of places we want to visit. Elpis then are learning Solar Pinhole and Pain Block, and he can also immediately cast Solar Pinhole to illuminate the small shack, shades of the first series in this trilogy with the Cult of Jinx, a time that Light perhaps still vividly remembers. Back home, meanwhile, we successfully unlock the Pleasure Pulse ritual, now allowing us to perform a ritual to boost everyone's happiness at the cost of work speed, and so it seems only logical that up next we unlock its counterpart, Neurosis Pulse, which then allows us to increase work speed at the cost of happiness. Then we can watch as Maniac relocates our deep drill. We still have about 600 units of plasteel hidden in this old mining spot right here, and as you can see on the left side here, we desperately need more of the stuff. Among other things, it is a vital ingredient in making advanced components. Our psycasters, meanwhile, get their food production going, although for the most part I think we will still rely on sending them food whenever they need it. In the meantime, Vulek finds a new source of steel underground, this one actually very close by to the deposit we have been mining so far, although with about 4,000 units still in storage there is no rush here. A bit more of a rush, meanwhile, exists for Lauren, at least that is the way she sees it, because she feels like she's getting too old and would like her age reversed. Now, transhumanists can construct the biosculpting pod to achieve that. However, we are going for a much simpler solution here and simply perform a chronophagy ritual. The target will be Zamal, who is only 24, so he can take the hit, and we are also making sure that ritual quality remains at least somewhat low. We definitely do not need a 20+ year age swing here, just a tad bit younger will suffice. So then, procedure complete, Lauren now becomes 30, Zamal ages up to 38. Unfortunately though, our slave also suffers some slight brain damage in the process, so in hindsight, perhaps it would have been better to build that biosculpting pod after all. Now, with Lauren now a production specialist, I think it's time that we upgrade our sleeping situation a bit. With a construction skill of 12, the chances of her making masterwork quality here are not overwhelming, But as you can see, they are apparently large enough to become a reality twice in a row. So, 2 new masterwork quality double beds, and I think we will also soon start hooking up some devices to them to satisfy all of our colonists' transhumanist desires. By the way, we have also once again started to dump toxic waste down the pit gate, and we will also assemble another expedition down there shortly, just not in this episode. For today, we watch as Light with a cooking skill of 3 starts butchering that elk from earlier and begins making meals over the open fire, and we then end things with a quest for mysterious cargo. Seems like the anomaly is following Elpis wherever he goes. This could be anything from a revenant spine to a mysterious dead clone all the way to a golden cube, so let me know whether or not you would like to see our 2 psycasters here receive that mysterious cargo drop. And with that, I think we can make the cut for today. Next time then, Elpis will hopefully finally get that 2nd rank as psycaster. We then finish things with some fan art, this one depicting Zamal after receiving that Halcyon gene pack. I am not quite sure whether or not he looks excited or deeply frightened about the changes, and that ambiguity I think captures the vibes of this series very well. So, let's make the cuts. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. And if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.